The Truth About Goblins. Chapter 33. "Here we are," said Ophelia, turning from the stove with a cup of warm milk in her hands. "This ought to help settle your nerves." She placed it on the table in front of Saphira, who offered a half-hearted smile in thanks. She couldn't manage words. Even Kit and Annie were silent, sitting on either side of the table, staring at her expectantly. Ophelia took the silence as well as she could. "It's a terrible thing, I know. Just awful. Someone breaking into your home. And there's no shame in being a little scared about it." She pulled up behind Saphira and rubbed her shoulders. "But try not to worry, honey. I fixed the window in Annie's room, so both of you can sleep there tonight." "I'm really sorry," said Saphira, speaking at last, "for all of this." "Don't be," she said, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "I'll go on ahead and set up a spare mattress." She smiled, but there was no hiding her concern. "Are you sure there's nothing else I can get you? Anything you need?" Saphira shook her head. "All right." Unconvinced, she turned to the stairs with a sigh. "I'll be back down in a moment." All three watched her leave, saying nothing. But as soon as the footsteps faded to silence, Kit and Annie sprang into action. "What happened?" said Kit. "Was it really a break-in?" said Annie. "What about Timothy? Is he—" "He's fine," said Saphira, shrinking from their questions. "Please don't press me like this." "But something did happen, right?" said Kit. "No way it was just a break-in." "Kit!" Annie kicked his shin. "She asked you to stop. How's she supposed to tell us anything if you keep—" "Ow!" He tried to kick back. "I only wanted to—" "It was him." They both looked back to Saphira. He killed them, and he was going to kill me if I didn't." She covered her face with her hands. "He knew everything. He knows everything." "Wait, what?" Annie frowned. "What are you trying to—" "My parents." She got to her feet, spilling the milk across the table. "He was after the crystal, that useless, blasted piece of rock, and he knew I had it. He knew. He was going to kill me. He would have if Timothy hadn't." "Hold on, Saphira." Annie was at her side in an instant. "You're going too fast. Can you slow down and tell us what happened?" "You don't even care." She turned to her, furious. "You never cared about them at all, and now they're dead, and it's all my fault, and I'll probably die too because of this stupid secret." Annie was stunned. "I didn't—" "You never do." She spun on her heel and ran up the stairs. Her footsteps shook the apartment. A door slammed in their wake. The kitchen was silent once again. Annie looked to Kit. "Was it something I said?" He got to his feet with a sigh. "What do you think?" With one look at the table, he grabbed a rag from the sink and turned to the mess. "She's mad at herself more than anyone else." Annie looked to the ceiling, hearing Ophelia's voice from the third floor. "Should we do something?" "Nah." He pointed to a mop in the corner. "Mother's got this one, and I think Saphira needs some time to cool off. She'll give us the whole story when she's ready." Annie seemed doubtful, but took the mop anyway, turning her attention to the milk on the floor. "Is it always like this?" He frowned. "What?" "The market. I keep expecting things to slow down." She thought he would laugh, but he only looked back down at the table. "Things have been weird lately." "That's an understatement." She forced a laugh to fill the silence. "Mines, murder, creepy magicians." He said nothing in reply. Hey, what's the matter? You're not mad at me too, are you? It's not that, he said, shaking his head. It's just... You remember the glasses, right? She stared at him. What glasses? The rainbow ones made of cotton candy. He rolled his eyes. From the forest, genius. The ones I gave to Timothy. She scowled. Don't have to be all nasty about it. What's your point? My point is that they looked familiar, no? He stopped and looked at her. Like maybe you've seen them before. She pursed her lips in thought. Maybe. Sorta like yins, right? But smaller? For crying out loud. He grabbed her shoulders. Use your brain. Creepy magicians, glasses, murder. She stared at him, confused. It was a long moment before she understood. Grim! Finally. He put a hand to his face. You're not the brightest crayon in the shed, are you? But she wasn't listening. We've got to tell Timothy. What if he's the magician he was talking about? What if he's the kidnapper? We can't tell Timothy, he said dismally. Saphira doesn't want him to know. What? Why? She thinks he'll do something stupid if he finds out, like go after Grim on his own. He rubbed the back of his neck. And to be honest, I get what she's thinking. He's pretty desperate right about now. He'll freak out for sure if we tell him. Then don't tell him. Tell the police or the arbiters or whatever. We've got to tell someone at least. Yeah, good luck with that. Finished with the mess, he threw the rag back in the sink. What would we tell him anyway? We don't have any proof. What about the glasses? Oh, yeah, that'll go down smooth. He crossed his arms. Just imagine going to the Arbiter's Tower with that story. No one's gonna believe a couple of crazy kids. What about... But her words trailed off into silence. Oh, I almost forgot. He looked down at his feet. Bellator? She only offered a nod in reply. A long pause followed. Neither of them spoke, and it wasn't until Ophelia re-entered the kitchen that the silence was broken. She's calmed down a bit, she said, answering the question before it was asked. Don't be too hard on her. She's just a little upset. Maybe more than a little, said Annie, heading for the stairs. I'll go talk to her. I think that's a good idea, she said. But as Kit made to follow, she clasped a stern hand on his shoulder and held him back. Oh, no, you don't. You still owe me an explanation, young man. Can it wait? He said. I'm tired, Mother. I've been walking all day. Then why don't you take a seat? She said, pulling up a chair. And then you can tell me what you were thinking when you decided to disappear for hours on end without letting your mother know where you were. Annie heard him groan as she made her way up the stairs. She couldn't help but snicker. But as she stopped before the door to her room, the smile vanished. She took a deep breath and peeked inside. Can I come in? Saphira was sitting on the spare mattress. She didn't bother looking up. Yes, it's all right. Annie stepped in and closed the door behind her. I'm sorry if I said something wrong. I didn't mean to make you mad. You didn't do anything, she sighed. I'm the one who's sorry. I shouldn't have snapped at you like that, not when I'm the one to blame. Actually... She took a seat on the couch. Some of this might be my fault. I was just thinking. You didn't tell anyone, did you? She grasped her hand. About the crystal? Or my secret? No, I didn't say anything. It's just... She paused. I had this picture of you, and it was in my room, and then someone broke into my room, and now it's gone. So... She shrugged. I don't know. Maybe it's just lost. But if someone was looking for you, they could have found me first and then stolen the picture. Saphira seemed relieved. I can only hope that's the case. I can't stop thinking, worrying, that maybe he wasn't the only one. Maybe there are others who know. I wouldn't worry, said Annie. I mean, he's one guy. The arbiters will take care of him. He won't be able to tell anyone else even if he wanted to. Is it really the end of the world if he knows who you are? But he knew about the crystal too, and that frightens me more than anything else. But why? She frowned. It's just a magic rock. What difference does it make? Oh, Annie. She released a deep breath and tried to keep calm. You underestimate the damage that a hearthstone can do. They are weapons. Never forget that. She had a hard time imagining Kit's crystal as a weapon, but maybe Saphira's was different. Still not sure what you mean. I don't see how other people's memories can be dangerous. But it's more than memories. Uneasy, she looked out the window. A touch, Annie. It's all you need. And for a split second, only a moment, you are that person. All of that person, if you choose. Their experiences are your own, their knowledge and their strengths, all added to yours. You could destroy or exploit anyone you wished, all while adding to your own power. She shrank under the weight of her own words. It is, in many ways, the most dangerous of the 3 hearthstones. Keeping it safe is a burden. Annie sat to attention. 3? There's another one? Yes, didn't you... Saphira looked back and sighed. Of course, goblin folklore. You're unfamiliar with the last hearthstone. I didn't even know there were 3 of them to begin with, she said. What's the 3rd one? It's, well... She sighed again. It's a bit of a story. Why don't we talk about this tomorrow? Tomorrow? I can't wait that long. She crawled onto the mattress and took a seat next to her. Besides, I don't need the whole story, just a quick summary. Saphira hesitated. Aren't you tired? Not anymore, she smiled. I could use a bedtime story. Within moments, she relented, grateful for the distraction. Well, I suppose it wouldn't hurt. You should know about the 3 hearthstones, seeing as you're a goblin. Why is it always 3? What? Saphira frowned. What do you mean? Things always come in 3s and 7s in stories. Why aren't there 4 hearthstones? Or 8? Saphira sighed again. Do you want to hear the story or not? Yeah, said Annie. Sorry. Anyway, she began. The 3 hearthstones are actually crystals, as you already know. There's Sunistan, Hearthstone Calamity. Is that one Kit's? Asked Annie. Yes, and there's also Motorstan, Hearthstone Chaos. And that one's yours, she finished. But what about the last one, the 3rd crystal? The 3rd crystal. Saphira lowered her gaze in thought. When she spoke again, her voice was very quiet. The 3rd crystal is a mystery, in some ways. No one has ever seen it before, not with their own eyes. Some people believe it doesn't exist at all, that it's simply a fairy tale. But others... She leaned in closer. Others believe it lies in the hands of a great sorcerer, a goblin by the name of Rumpelstiltskin. No way, exclaimed Annie. I know him. She shook her head, laughing at Saphira's reaction. I mean, I don't know him, but I heard about him before. She pulled the blankets over her knees, already immersed in the story. So Rumpelstiltskin has the last crystal? There are none who can say for sure, she said. But that's how the story goes. But what does it do? If Kit's reads minds, and yours reads memories, what does Rumpelstiltskin's do? Again, she took the time to pause. Deorstan, Hearthstone Catastrophe. It's said that... Her story was interrupted as the door creaked open. Kit poked his head inside. Ooh, are we telling scary stories? No, said Annie. Go away. But I've got a really good one, he said, wedging his way in between the two girls. It's called Spooky Scary Skeletons. Want to hear it? I was just telling Annie about Hearthstone Catastrophe, said Saphira, irritated by the intrusion. Can't you let us finish? Hearthstone Catastrophe? He scoffed. Geez, if you're gonna tell scary stories, at least tell 'em right. He turned to Annie, grinning from ear to ear. It's not really called that, you know. We cool kids call it the Crystal of Death. He snickered. Ya wanna know what it does? Let me guess, she said, trying to act uninterested. It kills people. He continued, ignoring her half-hearted guess. All you need is the Crystal of Death, Deorstan, and a name. That's all you need, and all your enemies will fall before your feet. He leaned in close. Dead. She scowled and pushed him away. You're so creepy, and I don't get what you're trying to say. He means that if you have the crystal, you have the power to take someone's life, explained Saphira. You whisper their name into the stone, and then... Yeah, exclaimed Kit, falling to the floor in mock agony. It's got me! It's got me! Annie groaned. Come on, Kit. Grow up already. She shoved a pillow in his face. How old are you? I'm dying, he cried. Dying. He gasped. Dead. And then he lay there, motionless. The girls stared at him for a moment before Annie turned back to Saphira. So you say someone's name into the crystal and then they die? Pretty much, she said, rolling her eyes at Kit's performance. Although I doubt its victims perish so melodramatically. How do you know? He challenged, suddenly alive again. Have you ever seen it happen? Well, no, she admitted. But Listen, kid. He crawled back over to Annie. This is how it really happens. First, you've got your crystal, your black stone. You say a name, it lights up, and when the light goes out, so does the guy who's got that name. He leaned back with a smirk. You got all that? I guess so, she said. But how does the name thing work? What if you say a super common name and end up killing the wrong person? I would imagine you have to know the one who has the name, said Saphira. And you would have to take care to be specific. But what about you and me? She said. People don't call us by our real names, remember? We're changelings. If someone says Saphira Lazuli into the stone, who ends up dying? I think it has to be our real name, she said, uncertain. At least that's how I remember it from the stories. There are many tales about Hearthstone Catastrophe in Goblin folklore. Crystal of Death, exclaimed Kit, exasperated. It's called the Crystal of Death. No one calls it Hearthstone Catastrophe anymore. It just sounds dumb. Well, I like it, said Saphira. It sounds more authentic, in a way. I think so too, said Annie. Bah, he said, shaking his head. You guys are being a bunch of girls. And you're being a twerp, said Annie. Why don't you make like a tree and leave? What? He said, seemingly offended. So I don't get to stay for the sleepover? Aren't we gonna do our hair and paint our nails? Maybe play some truth or dare when it gets dark? Out, said Annie, whipping a pillow at him. You're not invited. He caught the pillow and whipped it back. Pillow fight! You are so dead. She jumped to her feet. Quick, Saphira, get him! No fair, no fair! He tried to escape, but the girls had him pinned down before he could run. Annie reached for a pillow, her hand brushed against his ribs, and then he started to giggle. No way! What? Said Saphira, struggling to hold him down. What is it? I think he's ticklish. No! He cried, fighting against Saphira's grasp. Annie dived in, tickling him furiously and sending him into a fit of laughter. Through the tears and giggles, he cried out, You are cruel, Anastasia Green! All three were laughing now, with Saphira trying to control his flailing arms while Annie continued to tickle him. The room started to shake. All three sat to attention, staring at the ceiling as the light flickered overhead. The boxes in the corner came crashing to the floor, the force of the quake shaking the walls around them. By the time it had finished, the room was dark. No power. Annie was the first to speak. That was big. Bigger than before, added Saphira. Stupid drilling. Kit tried to sound casual, but there was a slight tremor to his voice. They should have finished by now. Annie didn't try hiding her nervousness. What if it gets worse? What if? He got to his feet, trying to brush off the incident. Probably just a fluke or something. I bet you it's the last of it. Doubtful as they were, the other two didn't argue. Saphira only sighed and collapsed on the mattress. We should get to bed. Yeah. Kit yawned and slipped out of the room. Good night. The girls continued to whisper as he closed the door behind him. He could still hear their voices by the time he had made it back to his own bedroom. But before he even stepped inside, someone grabbed his shoulder. Jeepers! He whirled around. Dag nabbit, Cam. You creeped the crap out of me. What do you want? The hall was dark. The lights overhead had gone off along with the rest of the electricity in the apartment. Kit could barely make out his brother's scrawny figure in the dim light. Something's wrong with the earthquakes, said Cam. Something's wrong with you. Kit sighed, exhausted. Couldn't you wait till tomorrow to give me a heart attack? I'm serious, look. He shoved a handful of papers in his brother's face. I compared the latest readings with samples from a few days ago when they started drilling. See the pattern? I can't see anything, genius. He pushed the papers back. The power's out. And now I can't use my seismograph. He followed Kit into his room. Do you have the key to the basement? I've got to check to make sure nothing's interfering with the readings. I gave the key back to Mother, and you promised you'd stop sneaking in there like that. Mr. Mussolini will harvest your organs if he catches you. But something's wrong, and I gotta find out what. Look at the patterns. They don't match up anymore. Something else is making the quakes. It's not the... Hold up, kiddo. This time he took the papers, bringing out his fireball to read them. Say that last part again. Cam took a deep breath and tried to slow down. Something else is causing earthquakes. The readings don't match up. The focus is off from where they're supposed to be drilling. I calculated it and... So you think something weird is causing quakes? He handed the paper back to him, doubtful. What do you think it is? I dunno, he admitted. But it's not the drilling. Listen, Cam. He guided him out the door. I'm pooped, and I think you're jumping to concussions. Conclusions. I meant what I said. You're hitting your head against the wall here, kiddo. Remember when you thought there was a poltergeist in the house because your EMF meter was too close to the microwave? There was a poltergeist, and I know Mom gave you the spare key to the basement. Just let me borrow it for one day. Good night, Cam. He grabbed his shoulders and shoved him back into the hallway. But... Kit closed the door in his brother's face, putting an end to the argument. It wasn't until Cam's footsteps disappeared down the hall that he let himself sigh. He didn't have the energy to humor anyone that night. Dragging his feet across the room, he crawled into bed. His mind was spinning, and he was too tired to slow it down. He could only stare at the ceiling, his ears still ringing from the last 2 days. But his body couldn't keep up with his brain. Eventually, his breathing slowed, his eyes closed on their own, and the excitement of the night faded into obscurity. Hi, I'm your narrator, Miranda Eastwood, also the author of The Truth About Goblins. If you liked this chapter, remember to add, follow, or subscribe to this channel so you can hear the next one. And if you didn't like this chapter, oh well, I can't really do anything about that. In any case, I just thought I'd let you know about my Patreon. You can check it out if you'd like to throw some support my way. It would mean a lot to me. Not to mention there's loads of extra exclusive content that I only post on Patreon. While I'm at it, I'll mention that The Truth About Goblins is now available as a complete audiobook, and you can get it wherever you get your audiobooks. Thanks for listening.